And if you haven't waited tables and you're a shitty fucking tipper, hopefully my 20% lesson has helped you to not be such a piece of shit.
You're alone again. I shouldn't be thinking of you, thinking of me. I know you're not.
Hello, everyone. This is Mike, the Daily Bread guy, and this is the Weekly Bread. It's the podcast where I talk about myself to nobody, and people for some reason listen to it. So I'm just gonna keep doing it then. It's my weekly therapy session with myself, where sometimes I'll try to dissect why I do things or things about my life and see like why I did them that way, or I'll talk about songs I wrote in the past. My band Lane Meyer, if you want to check that out, it's Instagram. You can check out Lane Meyer Band. That's what I did when I was 17 until I was about 22. And since then, I have put myself through school, started freelancing in 2006, and now I own an animation company, which is basically me freelancing with an LLC. But I do hire designers and animators sometimes for projects if the budget is right. But mostly it's just me creating shit on my own, and people hire me for hourly rate. And in that time, I created this comic called Daily Bread, and I couldn't get the handle for it, so it's Your Daily Bread on Instagram. And since then, I've drawn a comic every single day since November 11th, 2017. So I just passed my 3 years of doing that, which is crazy. And it just started off as me. It took me about a year to come up with the idea, and I wasn't even trying to come up with an idea. I was just sketching on Saturday mornings. I would go and just eat breakfast, and I'd sit there for like 3 hours and at this place called Jewel in Raleigh, which closed. It's now St. Rock, which is owned by the same people. But I used to do that. It used to be my favorite thing when I got back from. I was traveling the country, went back to Jersey, moved down to Raleigh because I had passed through here when I was traveling and I really liked it. And I moved here and I was in a very, very, I would say dark place, because dark place would mean that I would have been, I don't know, maybe more depressed, but I was definitely depressed from a failed marriage, and I found a way to I found it a little therapeutic when I was on Saturday mornings to go out and go to get breakfast, because at the same time I'm throwing a lot of stuff at you. So if you've been listening to the podcast for the last couple of years, then you probably know all this, but this is a refresher for new people. But when I first moved to Raleigh, I had no furniture in my apartment. I had an area rug and I had a bed and I had a bunch of kitchen stuff because when I traveled, I'd sold everything and I kept all my kitchenware because I would cook, and when I would stay different places, I would utilize their kitchen. So I had a stocked kitchen and I had like no furniture for about a year and a half. So that was very depressing. I highly recommend that people don't do that. And people want to praise minimalists, but I've done the minimalist thing. I've done it to the extreme. And there's something to be said about having art on your walls and furniture that's comfortable and just color in your apartment. It helps your mood. So I think the minimalist approach, I think some of that movement is fucking bullshit. Um, I do agree, but just, having everything in your apartment should make sense. Like having extra crap that you never touch or just sits there, it's kind of pointless. So I try to do a purge here and there and get rid of shit. But everything I have in my place now is pretty much what I want. Um, yeah, so, but at that time, when I first moved here, I had nothing in my apartment, so I wanted to get the fuck out of my apartment as much as possible, and I would go on Saturdays in the morning. I think that's why I would stay out so long and doodle, because I would just be sitting there at the counter and talking to people, and which was cool. And through that, I just started coming up with a character, and then within a year, oh, actually no, over a year, I came up with just the Daily Bread character, which is just kind of like a made-up version of myself. Just everything that I want to say, or things that actually happen in my life, or things that kind of happen in my life, I'll just do a little, just like one sentence thing with the character. And it's not like it's, I don't know. Um, I don't know what I'm trying to say, or like breaking boundaries, or it's not like anything new. There's a lot of comics out there that are really good. But out of all the ones that I've seen, none of them have a fucking podcast, so fuck them. And I'm way cooler than all of them. No, I'm not. But yeah, I am. So yeah. But today, this is a very I took a hard left to come back to exactly what the fuck I was going to talk about. But I'm going to talk about I saw the movie Waiting again the other day, and it reminded me of when I waited tables. Now, that took me about 5 minutes to get to this point, where in the beginning of this, you were probably like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? But most likely, if you're a new listener, um, I think the people who've been listening for a while are going to stick around a little bit longer than new listeners. New listeners, you should probably go back and listen to other episodes to see if this is actually something you want to keep listening to. But since I was talked about in the beginning about how I go backwards in my life and talk about moments, I used to wait tables when I was, what the fuck, how old was I? I was 22. My band had just broken up, and I was living in New Jersey. And I had talked to one of the other guys in my band, Chris. He had quit the band a year prior, and he was living out in California. And I got back from our last tour in October 2000. Is that it? Yeah. And we got back from like a 2-month tour with this band called, the Lawrence Arms, and I was just fried. I think I was just kind of like didn't want to do the band anymore. And I kind of just stuck with it for a little bit of time, and by the time May came around, I was just done with it because this guy, Brian, who was in the band, Brian was in this band called the Gaslight Anthem, which is gigantic now, which is awesome. And he wanted to be, I think he wanted to write and play, he wanted to write and sing more songs, and it didn't really match the style that we had because he had come into the band after a couple years of already being established. So the sound that he brought just didn't mesh. And he saw that, and he, like, after we got back from tour, it burned all of us out, especially him. That was the first tour he ever did, and that was the 8th tour that I had done. And I was just sick of going through member changes. So when he quit in like April 2001, he quit, and I was just done with it. And I quit the band. I was like, fuck it, I'm done with this. And so that led to me trying to figure out what to do next. And I got a job as a waiter to just figure it out because I wasn't going to go to college. I was 21, about to turn 22 at the time. And I had like started working. I had never had a job as a waiter, so I thought that it would be a good way to make decent money from what I'd heard. And so I started working at this restaurant called Chi-Chi's up in Randolph, New Jersey. And so I started working there, and at some point, I think like May or June, Chris, who was in Lanemeyer, he was out in California, like I said earlier. We were talking on the phone, and he's like, hey, my buddy Bob is gonna, our mutual friend Bob is gonna move out to California. And I was like, I want to do that. And he was like, you should. So then we made a plan that in September, I was gonna move out to California. So between the point that I had decided this and December, I was just gonna work this job as a waiter. And I did, and I waited tables at this really shitty Mexican restaurant place. And so seeing the movie Waiting was funny because when I moved to California, I continued waiting tables, and I waited tables for 4 years. And just the lifestyle of doing that, the movie pretty much portrayed it very well. I remember when I was in California, I was working at this restaurant. It was this little tiny cafe in Calabasas. And as soon as you entered Calabasas from like the 101, it was right there. And I forget the fucking name of this place, but I was working 2 jobs at the time. I know I'm jumping all over the place, but maybe one day I'll dissect it a bit more. But actually, a funny story, when I moved to California, I got there 10 days before 9/11. So that was fun that I'd flown from New Jersey to California. And then 10 days later, planes just started smashing into buildings. So that was fucking weird. and that definitely ended up being a very weird couple of years out there. I mean, it's definitely a very weird couple of years for a lot of fucking people. But I was in California, and I got a job out there at this place called BJ's Brewery, and then when that was done, I got a job at PF Chang's, and then a job at this place in Calabasas. So I'm working in this place in Calabasas, and I was like, man, I had enough years under my belt to be like, here's all the shit that I hate about waiting tables, and I remember I was like, I want to make a movie or write a, I think, yeah, I was like, I want to make a movie about this, even though I knew that I had no possible way of making a fucking movie about anything. I had no skills of doing that. But I had the idea, and I think then I went to, oh, maybe I'll write a book about it. And a couple years later, when the movie came out, I was like, son of a bitch. Like, the person took my idea, which most likely anyone was going to make that movie because so many people are in the restaurant industry. And the job just sucks fucking ass. Especially for me. I don't know. I gave good service. I was very friendly. I was fun. But then motherfuckers, you just bust your ass for fucking people, and you have like 5 or 6 tables, all different amounts of people, meaning like you have a 4 top, a 6 top, a 10 top, a 2 top, another 2 top, and then like another like 6 top. So you have all of these fucking people that want like, they're there for an experience and they want shit all the time, but they're like really bad at being patient or asking along with the group. So like if I've got 5 tables and I go to a 10 top and 2 people are like, "Can I get this drink?" and I say, "Sure," and I walk by another table and then they want something another table. So I got to like kind of organize in my brain what the fuck's going on. And then I come back, and then at that 10 top table where the 2 people ordered drinks, see, I remember this, then someone will be like, "Oh, can I get this?" And you're like, you couldn't have just fucking ordered that when your friends ordered. So, sure. So you got to just kind of fake a smile, and then you got to run back, and you got to think about, all right, whose food's coming up? What tables do I need to clean up? Did I just get sat? If so, I got to go bring fucking water to them. Who needs a check? Who's waiting on this? So you're just constantly scrambled, and then you get in the weeds, and your brain just goes ape shit. And you can always tell when someone was in the weeds because you'd be in the back in the kitchen, and you see someone just like, it's like a fucking deer in headlights, and they're running to the station or the kiosk to put an order in, and then you got to find a fucking manager to like take something off or do something, and they're like fucking useless. Restaurant managers back in the day, in the experience that I had, they were completely fucking useless. They were glorified waiters who just had put in the years waiting tables, and then all of a sudden they're wearing a suit or whatever the fucking manager outfit is for men and women, and then they just suck. They were so fucking pointless. There was a couple managers that I loved, don't get me wrong, but there was this one fucking bitch, which is not PC to say, but fuck that. She was working in PF Chang's, and she was such a fucking asshole, and she had such a power trip, and I'm like, motherfucker, you are a glorified waiter or waitress, and you just got promoted. You didn't go through really any training, and now you're like have this fucking holier than thou fucking attitude. And she sucked. And then I worked with her at another restaurant, it was a PF Chang's in Woodland Hills. And then somehow she went down to San Diego where I'd moved when I was living in California, and she was there too. And she became such a fucking bitch, and I hated her. Oh my God. And then, I'm not gonna say her name, but she sucked. People suck. Customers suck. Back in the day when someone wanted to split a check, and the reason I'm talking about this too is because I was out the other day with a couple friends, and the waitress came over, and we wanted to split the check, and I was like, how easy is it to do that now? It seems simple. And she said, oh my God, it's like I just drag and drop, and it's just so easy. And I was like, man, You are so fucking lucky because like 20 years ago, I did not have that capability to do that shit. And we'd have to find a manager who was like just wherever the fuck. And this table looking at like waiting for you to bring their shit back. And then the more they wait, the more pissed off they get. And then they're already going to tip shitty, so they tip even more shitty. So then it's like, and people don't know what the fuck 20% is, which here's a simple way to do it. If your bill is $20, just cut off the zero, times that number by 2. That's $4. $4 and 20% on $20 is 20%. Then you do that again, rinse and repeat. So it's $50, X out the zero, you have the number 5, just times it by 2, and you got $10. $100, cross off the zero at the end, you have 10, times it by 2, you have 20. And so if it's like if it's $45, then you go, all right, well, 40 would have been $8, 50 would have been $10, so 45 you could do like 9. And it's also good to just tip a little bit more. Like I tip way more now, especially like if I have a good month or week or couple months of working, I try to really give back to waiters and waitresses and bartenders and never fuck with a bartender. Never fuck the bartender. Even if you're working as a waiter or waitress, I would never fuck with a bartender because they would totally fuck with my drinks. Not like fuck with them, put shit in it, but they would just take their fucking time. And I saw them do that to people. So they were the people that, and I wouldn't like kiss their ass. I just treated them like human beings and never pressured them for my drinks. I just gave them their time, and I just always respected them, and they loved me because it was mutual respect. And even when my shit was like far behind and I had established a relationship, I would still wait and shut my mouth. And they'd be like, "Oh, where are you at?" I'd be like, yeah, I got this." And they'd see that the ticket was far behind, and they'd just like push me to the front. And that was awesome. And you always would tip them well at the end. You'd always tip your bussers at the end. And then we had like food runners. So basically, like when I was working in P.F. Chang's, if you sold $1,000 that night, I think I knew I'd walk away with $100, which kind of blew to be working from like 4 o'clock in the afternoon until 10 at night and make $100. To me, I was like, dude, fuck that shit. So like that's how I like what I got out of waiting tables. Like I just put myself through school. I was like, I want to be making a shit ton of money eventually, which kind of ebbs and flows when you freelance. But to continue on this rant, yes, the movie Waiting, it's like pretty on point, except for the part where they're spitting in the food. That I saw, I think one time. I think one time this guy was a real pain in the fucking ass, like nuclear pain in the ass, and the bartenders fuck with his shit. But other than that, like no one really would do that. No one would do that. But yeah, man, I mean, it was a thankless fucking job, and I tried my best to be as good as a server as possible. I would just, and the worst is when people would be like, they'd be like, oh, or he had like two people at the table fighting for the bill, and one would be like, oh, I tip better. 100%, they're the worst fucking tipper. And one time these two dudes did that, and I was working at, again, it was just the P.F. Chang's in Woodland Hills. Funny enough, this is the P.F. Chang's where there's a video of Nick Lachey and Jessica Simpson when they were doing the Newlywed Show. So we caught wind of that because the production or the studio, they'd call into the restaurant and say, hey, Nick Lachey and Jessica Simpson are coming in, we're going to shoot. So they'd come in with cameras and they would just kind of sit in a corner and you'd see the film crew. And there's a famous scene where Nick Lachey goes to this guy and he's like, hey man, like, what are your thoughts on, I think one of her friends are like hot girls, and the guy's like, oh, well, I'm gay. And he's like, oh. And it was like an MTV spot. That dude was Zim. He was one of the guys that I worked with, and he was like the funniest fucking guy. Just this like older, salty motherfucker. like great, sarcastic dude, and I fucking loved him. So when I remember when I was in San Diego, I saw that commercial. I was like, holy shit, dude, he's that's crazy that he's on there. Um, but this one time I was working at that restaurant, and these two guys, it was a lunch shift, and these guys like, and that was the thing too in Woodland Hills is like everyone's got money or pretends they have money, and these guys just slap down their American Express cards. And I'm looking at both of them, and I was like, who tips better? And the one guy goes, me. And I go, okay. And I give it to the other guy. I go, that means you don't. And luckily they laughed because there was a couple times where I would say sarcastic shit like that, and it would backfire. Namely, one of these times where Bitch McGee was managing at the P.F. Chang's in San Diego, and this old couple was there, this two-top, and they were just running me around rampant, just fucking assholes. And I remember they wanted extra rice, and I stupidly go, well, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. So I go in the kitchen, and then shitty manager, what's her face, comes up to me, and she's like, why does table 11 want to see me? And I was just like, so I just like kept getting in trouble because I was just so done at that point. And I remember the operation partner at the time, he was pretty cool. He got me like in the office one time. He's like, "What's going on with you, man?" I was like, "Man, I'm just fucking over this shit. I just don't want to. I'm just, I was like, I'm just here for a paycheck." Now looking back at it, if I had to wait tables now, which God fucking help me, I would make more of an experience out of it for people. And I'd walk up to them and be like, introduce myself and say, what is the one thing I cannot fuck up today? And, obviously I don't say it like that, but like, what's the one thing I cannot mess up tonight that would make your night? If I mess this up, it would ruin your night. Like, what can I not mess up? I think people would really appreciate that. So I think there's like ways to create an experience, but there's always going to be that point where you're just going to get in the weeds and you're going to freak out, which I think nowadays I've yet to see anyone scramble like that at the restaurants that I go to, because I think things are a little bit more streamlined because of technology, and I don't know, maybe people are just a little bit better at tipping these days. But yeah, so if I had to wait tables, I would do that. But because I waited tables, now I'm always respectful to the staff, always. And prior to waiting tables, I was the worst fucking tipper in the world. I would leave like $5 on like 60. And once I waited tables, first week I was training, I was like, oh shit, I'm an asshole, because I was doing that super fucked up for so many years, and I just had no respect for any wait staff because I just didn't know. So if I ever have kids, I am going to make sure that they spend a summer or a year or whatever it is actually waiting tables, because I want them to understand that for the rest of their life, that is going to be, you have to respect that industry. And so I hope that people listening, if I'm guessing that people have waited tables and they're going to completely agree, or hopefully agree. I can say completely agree, like I'm 100%, but they can like understand what I'm saying. And if you haven't waited tables and you're a shitty fucking tipper, hopefully my 20% lesson has helped you to not be such a piece of shit. And I remember I posted on LinkedIn one time, I said, people who tip less than 20% are the opposite of good or something. And one person wrote, well, maybe sometimes a family can't afford it and that's all I got. It's like, well, you better budget for the fucking tip, because the people, just because you're going out and you're like, I hardly get a chance to do this. It's like, well, then bake that into what the fuck you're going to spend. If you only have $50 and you're taking out the family or taking out like your significant other or whatever it is, like, don't just show up and say like, this is a great night for us and I'm going to fuck someone over, because that shit comes around, especially if you know it. And now that you do know it, you can't say that you don't know it. So like tipping 10% sucks. Yeah. So, especially nowadays, because these people are holding on by a fucking thread, and you gotta really pay attention to that. And restaurants really need people to show up. And yeah, so that's my rant. That was a very long one. I was actually not even gonna, I didn't think I was gonna talk for this long, but hopefully that helped you. And if not, I don't know. But be a better tipper and respect your waitstaff and order your fucking drink when everyone else does. And if you don't, at least point it out. Like there's a couple times where I have the waiter or waitress came back and I was like, "Hey, I know I'm a fucking asshole. I should have ordered it with them." It's like I called it out because sometimes I just wasn't paying attention. They walked away too fast. But it's like as long as they know, it kind of softens the blow a bit. But the fact that I'm aware makes me do that like 1% of the time, and I go out a lot. I go out a shit ton. So, all right, well that is it, and that's all I got. Today is the 1st of December. I'm recording this on the Tuesday where I always put these out, and I'm going to put this out now. So hopefully it'll be up soon, which doesn't really matter because if you're listening to it, it's already up. So Christmas is coming up, and if you want to buy somebody some stuff, then I do hand-drawn prints, custom ones, and I got some sketchbooks for sale. And my other book, I'm really trying hard to get it out, and I don't know what's gonna happen for Christmas, so hopefully. But go follow the Instagram account. It's Your Daily Bread, BRED, and share this with anyone who has waited tables and they might get a kick out of it. Goodbye.